Recording. Hello again, it's me Chaz, back with another video. I was thinking if I should make this video because it's been a long time since I've made one of these, and this one is extremely very overdue. But this is my best and worst of March 2025. Quite a lot of things have happened since I'm recording this video in September 18th to be exact. Again, a lot of things have happened, so some of these nations that I have on the best column probably had a bad June or September international break. Some of these have qualified that may have had a bad March but managed to still somehow qualify for the World Cup in June or maybe September. So yeah, because of that, yeah, a lot of things have happened since, but I'm gonna do this video anyway. So best of worst of March, and basically how these videos work is I pick 5 teams that I believe had a good international break back in March 2025 this year, and 5 teams that I don't believe had a good international break in March of 2025. I should also add, these videos are strictly focused on the World Cup. So anything to do with friendlies or any other competition, I'm not really going to discuss that. So again, strictly the World Cup. Alright, as usual, I start off with the worst, and in my opinion, the team that I believe 5th worst, who had a poor international break in March, that is Nigeria. So despite Nigeria picking up a much needed win against Rwanda away, they drew with Zimbabwe in the last minutes at home. Zimbabwe was bottom of that group. It should have been a straightforward win for them. That draw definitely cost them, and they are not in the World Cup qualifying spot. That would be first in each group in the CAF. And unfortunately for them, they are even second base. So I believe Nigeria had a poor international break. Considering who they are, of course, one of the top nations in Africa. And they're ranked first in this group. They're seeded top in this group and not even in the top 2. And it doesn't get better for them, I should mention, in September. Well, we're going to stick with the CAF and move on to the team that I believe played well, had a great international break in March, and that is Morocco. 2 nations in Morocco's group, one who withdrew, that's Atreya, and another who was disqualified during the CAF qualifiers, that's Congo. Both aren't in this group. So from 6 teams originally to 4, Morocco won back-to-back games in March, first beating Niger 2-1 and then Tunisia 2-0. Well on their way to qualifying for another World Cup. They did fantastic back in 2022, becoming the very first nation from Africa, from the CAF, to reach a semi-finals of a World Cup. On that way to that one, they did defeat both Spain and Portugal, who they would be co-hosting the 2030 World Cup with. Morocco has a 100% record in qualifying, and they would also be hosting this year's African Cup of Nations. And I might as well say they did qualify for the World Cup this month. Alright, now let's move on to the 4th nation, who I believe played poor during the March international break. And that nation would be Iraq in the AFC. Iraq is in Group B. They drew 2-2 with Kuwait. They were 2-0 down and did pull back a draw, making it 2-2. They did get themselves a point, however, Iraq being at home, poor for them. Their next game, they would go on to lose to Palestine 2-1, and that would keep them in, I believe, third at that time, which is a spot in the fourth round of the AFC World Cup qualifying round. In the AFC, the top two teams in each group, that's 3 groups, will qualify for the World Cup. The teams that finish third and fourth will have another opportunity to qualify for the World Cup in the fourth round. Iraq would end up qualifying for the fourth round later on in June. Alright, yes, go back to the positive now, but we're still staying in the AFC. Iran are the nation who I believe played well in March. They were able to qualify for another World Cup. They drew 2-2 with Uzbekistan. That is the 4th time Iran and Uzbekistan went up against each other during this World Cup qualifying campaign, and that is the 4th time they drew against each other. Prior to that, though, they beat Iran beat the UAE 2-0. Iran, like I mentioned, have qualified for another World Cup in March, topping Group A. They would remain top of Group A. They would pick up 1 defeat, but that is the only defeat they had. Well done for Iran. Alright, let's go back to the negative again. So in third, the nation that I believe had a poor international break in March, that would be Chile. They lost to Paraguay 1-0 and drew with Ecuador 0-0. Probably not the worst type of results, but because of the position that they were in at that time, that they needed to start picking up wins, and they're going to do that, I should say, because I'm filming this in September. Chile did fail to qualify for this World Cup. And the nation who I think played great in March, third, that would be Japan, who beat Bahrain 2-0, and that would have them qualify for another World Cup. They've been qualifying for World Cups since 1998, haven't missed one since then, even hosted one themselves back in 2002 with South Korea. They would go on to top this group, hardly challenging this group at all. Both Saudi Arabia and Australia, I believe, are the only 2 nations in this group to get points from them. Japan looking extremely strong going into their 8th World Cup. Right, 4 more teams to mention. Second, who I believe played poorly in March, had a disappointing March, that nation would be Bolivia. Bolivia lost 3-1 to Peru. That was a big game considering both nations were around about the same positions, trying to get that 7th potential playoff spot. They would, though, pick up an important point against Uruguay, 0-0. Despite having a poor March, Bolivia do end up finishing 7th in September and is the nation from the CONMEBOL to represent them in the Interconfederation playoffs. And now in 2nd place, a team that I believe had a fantastic March. That's the lone team from the OFC that I've mentioned, and that is New Zealand. New Zealand has qualified for another World Cup. I believe this is now their 3rd World Cup. They had great performance against Fiji, domination there, 7-0, and then went up against New Caledonia. A very tough match this one was, the toughest match New Zealand had during the OFC World Cup qualifiers. New Zealand still, though, managed to win 3-0, qualify for another World Cup who is now their third World Cup. So we've finally got a team from the Oceania to compete at the World Cup. It has been a while, and it looks like going forward we will start seeing at least one team from the OFC guaranteed a chance to qualify for the World Cup. It might keep being New Zealand, to be fair, we don't know yet, but regardless, great for New Zealand and great for the region. Okay, and this is the team number one who I believe had a poor World Cup qualifying campaign in March. That nation would be Bahrain. Bahrain lost against Japan, who is top of the group in Group A. They lost to them. That's the second time they lost to them, 2-0. And then they would lose to Indonesia 1-0. Very tough for Bahrain there. They ended up dropping out of the fourth round spots. And I should mention this, Bahrain did fail to qualify for the World Cup. They were eliminated in Group 3 along with China back in June. And finally, the nation that I believe had a fantastic World Cup qualifying campaign in March, who played great, that nation is Argentina, the current World Cup holders, 3 times champions. The reason I put them as number one is the fact that, other than of course qualifying for another World Cup, it's the 2 teams that they beat in March. First nation is Uruguay, who Argentina beat 1-0. Again, another rival of theirs in the CONMEBOL. And then they beat Brazil 4-1. I believe they qualified before this match even took place, and then went to beat Brazil, another rival of theirs, 4-1. Because of that, beating the 2 other established nations in the CONMEBOL, I had to put Argentina as 1. They've qualified for a World Cup. Again, they are going into the World Cup as reigning and defending champions. We'll see what happens there. Usually in my other videos, I kind of mention the future matches or the future fixtures. But since this is way overdue, I'm not going to, because they already happened. Anyway, thank you for watching and listening. I appreciate it as usual. And once again, bye.